We should be all set.
Thank you so much. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Southeast Minnesota Park Arts Presenter Series. Today we have two speakers who will be presenting ecotherapy. But before we introduce the speakers, we usually give some update or overview about the park artists, the viewers. So I will let Dr. Brian, I think Brian will give us some update. About
Sure, I
college.
can start. Do you want us to do some introductions too?
I think that's also a good idea. Okay, let us do it.
Yeah. So I'm Brian Lynch, general pediatrician, Mayo Clinic. I've been part of this committee, the last 4 or 5 years, and just really enjoy kind of community engagement work. We don't have any big updates for Mayo. We will be coming out with the community health needs assessment implementation plan that's going to work on the priorities of mental health, substance use, and access to care. And especially the mental health aspects has a lot of tie-in with what we're doing here and getting, children and adults connected with nature. So yeah, it's very exciting work. Thanks. And should I send it over to Ruth for introductions?
Hi, my name is Ruth Hicks, and I work in primary care in Rochester and Casson, and I maintain the website. So I work with communication for our staff, and we also put information out on our externally facing website for our patients about opportunities from the parks. Megan?
I am Megan Long, a naturalist at Oxbow Park, which is part of our Olmsted County Park System. And then I also help run our Southeast Minnesota Park RX Facebook page. And I'll pass it on to Krista.
Hi, I am Krista Seymour. I'm a public health nurse at Olmsted County, and I work with our school age youth, so typically age 5 to 18. And an update, we just completed, so we had been doing some Nature RX stuff at one of our schools in Q3, and then in Q4 we had to add an additional staff for transportation, so we doubled the number of students. And we recently surveyed them at the end of Q4, so pretty excited to have some data from them about the mental health benefits, some barriers, and then just ideas of what they'd like to see more of. So, and I will send it over to my coworker, Nicole, who is new to our group as well.
Hello, everyone. I am Nicole Funk, and I am on Krista's team as well, a public health nurse with the school age team, and worked alongside Krista doing the Nature RX with some of the school youth this last semester. So I look forward to seeing what else we can bring forward. I can pass it on to who else do we have?
Yeah, I'll just jump in quick.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm Ben from Rochester Parks and Rec. Been joining in on these meetings for the last few years. I guess one quick update from us. We just got our Passport to Parks printed booklets in for the summer. So we'll be getting those out to Quarry Hill Nature Center and other places around the city to help promote getting out into nature and outdoor programming and things that you can do in the city parks for the summer. Let's see, Ariel, did you introduce yet?
Not yet, thanks. Ariel Courtney, I'm the DNR Parks and Trails Partnership Consultant in St. Paul, and I pop in and out of these. I try to support Sarah Holger, who's the lead naturalist at Whitewater State Park near Rochester, and her work with the group, and always interested in hearing kind of what's going on. I'm excited to hear about the school Nature RX stuff, and we have had the pleasure of having Annie do a presentation for our statewide naturalist program, so I'm excited to hear Annie and Becca's presentation today. I don't know who else is left. Is that everyone?
I think maybe me. Yeah, my name is Musa Abdi. I am with Olmsted County Public Health. I especially work on a program which is called a SHIP. I don't know if you heard, most all of you. So, and also I have been blessed to work with this coalition. So that's me. So I think so. The only remaining is our speakers. So we have two options. We can read your bio, which we usually do, or you can introduce yourself. Which one do you prefer? I think we could.
We can just introduce ourselves. You
Okay.
sent the bio out. It's Becca, do you want to introduce yourself before I start the presentation, or just do that as we go?
Yeah, I can do that because I think you're going to
Great.
talk first. So, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. My name is Becca Manthe. I am a graduate student at Adler Graduate School. I am near the end of the training. I have 2 more courses left, and I did an art therapy licensure track and a LMFT, which is the marriage and family therapy licensure track. So I have created a specialty of nature-based art therapy or nature-based expressive arts therapy while I've been in that program, and we'll be sharing information about what it means to have a nature-based practice. I also have a special interest in working with people with climate change sensitivities and within the regenerative agriculture and rural farming communities. So that's enough about me. You'll hear more about my work later in the presentation.
Thanks, Becca. And my name is Annie Bunio. I work with Minneapolis Nature-Based Therapy, which I'm going to talk about. And then I also work with an initiative with parks, actually with Scott County and Three Rivers Park District. So I'm excited to share a little bit about that work. I'm currently wrapping up. I'm in my last finals week ever of my clinical social work degree. So if I'm a little bit scatterbrained, I apologize in advance. Yeah, and so I'm really, really excited to be here today. This is something that both Becca and I we connected before, and we're just really honored to be here and share about kind of the emergence of ecotherapy and nature-based therapy. So I'm gonna share my screen here if I can figure it out, I think. Let's see. All right, do you see my presentation? Thumbs up. Okay. Sorry, I always struggle now. You probably see yourselves. I work in the outdoors, so this part's always a struggle for me. Hold on. There we go. Over here. Okay. We are going to give some time at the end of the presentation for questions. I'm really bad at monitoring the chat and presenting at the same time, so please feel free to put things in the chat and we'll kind of come back to it at the end. But again, really excited to talk about how we connect with nature for health and well-being, something that you all are very passionate about and are doing work on already. Kind of an overview of what we're planning to talk about today is just both of our organizations that we're working with in the nature-based therapy. I'm also going to touch a little bit on community practice and prevention. It's something that I personally am very passionate about, and I think the Parks RX model works really well to support this. And then we're going to do a little bit of an experiential exercise. Becca is going to guide us and facilitate that, and we will have time for question and answer. So kind of to ground us in, I'm going to share a poem that I really appreciate. It's by Becca Hemsley. She has some really wonderful human nature poems, and it's called Magic. And some of you might have heard me read this before.
So you tell me that I'm childish, seeing magic in the world, that there's no room for enchantment on this scientific earth. You give me explanations and you hand me charts and graphs, for you say there can't be magic in the company of fact. But I'll argue that there's magic in a newborn baby's cry and in how that baby heard its mother's heartbeat from inside. I'll tell you that it's magic, how a butterfly exists, that there's something most spellbinding about metamorphosis. There's magic in the differences between each flake of snow and in people finding footprints from 1,000,000 years ago. I'll tell you that it's magic how the tides move with the moon and how the sun can split a raindrop into 7 different hues. It's magic how a spider weaves a complex, fragile web and how all the words of years of songs are stored inside our heads. But you'll tell me there's no magic, for this can all be explained. Yet to me, there's magic dancing in the workings of our brains. See, the danger is our knowledge, means there's little ought to spare. But if we stop looking for magic, then we'll never see it there. I really enjoy this poem, and I think if we can sometimes remove ourselves from the magic that can happen and the awe and the sense of awe that nature can provide for us in that healing process. And so I like to kind of take that step back, and while we can get really focused on kind of the process, remembering that nature is the central healer that we are talking about today. And a little bit that I also really like to touch on anytime I talk about this work is that while nature-based therapy and ecotherapy are becoming more of an evidence-based practice and an accepted modality, and there's growth in this, I would really be remiss to not mention that this practice of healing with nature and healing nature and the reciprocity has really been around since before we colonized this land. Indigenous peoples have been using the land and nature and the earth for healing and healing it in return long before this. So a little bit about Minneapolis nature-based therapy. Minneapolis nature-based therapy is a psychotherapy practice for children, families, and adults. We work in an outdoor setting, so our office is the outdoors, and we use nature as part of the therapeutic and healing practice. This practice opened in December 2020 during the pandemic. Carrie Clevin, who is the owner of the practice, decided to use the pandemic as to pursue her longtime passion of an interest in nature-based therapy. As we all know, the benefits of spending time in nature are really well documented across disciplines. You know, between stress and anxiety, it has both physical, mental, and social emotional healing methods. So I love that right now we have representatives from the medical field, also in public health, the schools. It's really important on all of those levels. And I'm sure that you've had lots of presenters really get into those differences. So I'm not going to do that currently right now. Some things that I've heard with the clients that I work with, many clients express that they really love the ability to move around in practice, that they're not in the confines of an office space and they don't have to have that close, direct, eye-to-eye, face-to-face contact. I think this is a really trauma-informed way of practicing because we're giving our clients agency to move their body to do what feels good for them and to engage with nature in a way that feels appropriate for them. A lot of the kids that I work with also really enjoy experiential and activity-based practices that we do in partnership and in conjunction with our talk therapy. Great. And then I do want to share a little bit at my time getting my clinical social work degree. I was able to conduct a systematic literature review examining the role of nature-based therapy in promoting resilience and protective factors in youth. I know that this is something we start saying resilience and people have mixed feelings about resilience, knowing that we don't want to have a society and an environment where people need to be resilient. However, with the pervasiveness of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and trauma in our society currently, setting up preventative mental health care and preventative systems that provide protective factors for these environments that we have currently is really important and a critical approach. So that was kind of my interest in studying the possible benefits. So what I found through my research is that the development and investment in more nature-based therapy programs could really increase resilience and protective factors for youth and their families at risk of or currently experiencing adversity. And so that gives us a few kind of implications of the study, or that investing in a preventive system, for many of you in public health, you know all about this. Prevention pays. It really increases our cost saving. It also helps promote health efficacy and equity, health equity. And there was a really interesting study conducted in the UK, kind of looking at this cost analysis, specifically with nature-based prevention programs, and the cost savings were really huge. Also, I really think preventative and proactive approaches to mental health are really important. Currently, right now, we have a very medicalized mental health service system that requires mental health diagnoses in order to receive health insurance coverage for mental health services. I really am doing a lot of advocacy work to kind of crack this open, because I think we need to be able to provide preventive approaches that are going to promote and support families in our community. Additionally, I think my research really did show that we could really benefit from some more research specifically on maybe different types of modalities that resonate with different populations, as well as longitudinal studies that can kind of show the health benefits long-term for our community members. And then lastly, I really do think that our Parks RX model, our nature-based models, are really also focused on the environmental benefits. As I mentioned, the reciprocal healing that happens when we take time to invest in nature as a resource for our healing, we're more likely to invest in healing and protecting our earth. And so I really like this quote from Robin Wall Kimmerer from Braiding Sweetgrass, saying, "As we work to heal the earth heals us." So it really is this reciprocal method. So a Parks RX model and an example of some of the work I've been really honored to participate in is being the developing wellness programs with Three Rivers Park District in partnership with Scott County. It is a grant-funded position, and what it was is develop free, beginner-friendly, low-impact programs in the Scott County region. I really learned that and wanted to take an approach to diversify program offerings in the Scott County area. Currently at Three Rivers, there's a lot of nature centers, so nature education as well as recreation offerings. So I really wanted to kind of start doing some more mental health, wellness, and mindfulness programs, thinking that in offering different kinds of programming, we are going to really actually increase welcome and expand who feels welcome in the parks. All of my programs offer some sort of mindfulness focus. I know that there are a lot of different concepts of mindfulness. I really like to kind of broaden and expand what mindfulness is, in that it is really kind of engaging people in the presence of nature, and doing that in a lot of different creative ways, not a one-size-all kind of prescriptive way of doing mindfulness. And I'll kind of talk about that here in the next slide. So what this meant for me is creating options. I offer programs for adults, family-focused programs, and also kid-focused. I've also offered special programs for ages 50 plus, because we found through research that ages 50 and over are less likely to engage in the park system. So that was another target audience. We did different kinds of programming. So drop-in programmings where people can come and go to try different activities out. We did self-guided, where I've set up mindfulness trails, and people can explore them on their own in their own time. And then also doing programs where people need to register, like forest bathing or other activities that we partner with contractors to do. I've also been doing, I know somebody mentioned community engagement, also been doing some community engagement with this work. So offering private groups for community partners, such as our Scott County Family Resource Center. We also, Abdi, I'm glad to hear about SHIP. We partner with SHIP, and they've been really great at giving some financial support to have some different materials for our programs as well. And so this has been a really fruitful experience. And through some of the community partnerships, I've been able to work with, again, the Family Resource Center. I've worked with the Juvenile Alternative Facility and done some private programming on site there. We've worked in all of our Three Rivers, Scott County parks, as well as partnered with some of the local city parks just to make the programs more accessible. But just to kind of think, some of the things that I like to think of as I was developing some of these programs is how to really use your talents that you have and your sphere of influence. Also looking at the talents of others and community members. So like I mentioned, I have 3 wonderful contractors who do yoga, which is not a talent I have, but offer a wonderful yoga program. We've got Qigong and forest bathing guides. And so we've been able to really work with community members to highlight their talents and skills in the parks as well. And then another thing I always recommend is listening to community and the partners, because through that, I was able to develop some programs that served a need and kind of crossed a barrier. So for example, I was working with one of our East African mothers groups, and the women really expressed wanting adult programs and kid programs simultaneously so that they could have their own individual program separate from their kids, so they could really focus on their own relaxation responses through mindfulness, and at the same time have a program for their kids because they didn't have childcare. So that's just one example of really being able to listen and engage with the community has allowed to kind of offer some supportive programming and still invite people to feel welcome and to engage with nature in that space. So tying it together, I was kind of thinking, I've worked with the Parks RX group kind of up here towards the cities. I'm in Minneapolis. And I was thinking about, like, what do I want to kind of have a takeaway message for all of you working in this critical work? One idea is just, again, using your sphere of influence. You are all very intelligent people working in really important avenues, whether it's medical in the clinics. There's my finals brain is kicking in. So whether you're in a clinic or you're in public health or you're in a parks or you're working with the schools, you all have different spheres of influence and platforms where you can kind of push these models. So thinking about green prescriptions, if you're a provider, how can we do that and really talk about and educate people about the benefits of nature? So maybe this, I think a big thing of, even my work in therapy is psychoeducation and providing resources. And so whether I love to hear that you're already talking about the different park locations that you can connect people with, the different resources. So having this networking ability is really huge. Infographics are really helpful, I think. And so I just put this one up here. It's from Children and Nature Network, which is a wonderful resource I hope you all know about. And then nature-based therapy. So when you have families that really could benefit from some additional one-on-one support, making those referrals that you feel, if you feel that the nature piece is going to really benefit and enhance their healing process. So that's a little bit about me. I want to leave time for Becca and questions as well, but I am really excited to be stepping into this role with Minneapolis Nature-Based Therapy, and I also am planning to do some trainings and consultation work because, like I said, this model is something that I'm really passionate about, and so anything I can do to continue to support this work throughout the state is really exciting for me.
Thanks so much, Annie. This is like wonderful to hear about your work. And I am just going to give everybody a moment to find something to write with and some paper. It can be a scrap of paper, because at the end of my presentation about using nature-based expressive art therapy, we're going to be doing an experiential together. And then also just invite you to take a breath and just come back into the present moment. It's a lot of information to digest. I can just let that settle for a minute. So again, I am Becca Manthe. I am on a track to have an art therapy license and a marriage and family therapy license. Not done with graduate school yet, but will be done this year. I work at Intuitive Therapy and Consulting. I am a nature-based expressive art therapist in training. It is a group private practice in Golden Valley, and I see children 8 years and older, adolescents, and adults, doing therapy with individuals, couples, and families. My model for working with nature and art as a co-therapist is that we can do this indoors, we can do this outdoors, and we can do this through telehealth services. Next slide. Sorry. We're going to talk quickly about the nature-based expressive art therapy paradigm. This information comes from a book that's called Nature-Based Expressive Arts Therapy by Sally Atkins and Malia Snyder. So all of the traditional parts of understanding psychology are the basis for working as a nature-based art therapist, and then some. And so I'm going to talk about all of the expanded views that come from being a nature-based provider. So the causes of psychological suffering from this modality is a disconnection from the web of life. Natural stress and grief response. It's a natural stress and grief response to the alarms of our time, attempting to maintain unsustainable lifestyles. And also, Joanna Macy has called it, we're a new time for us, that we're entering the great turning. The language that we used is resource-based. It's regenerative, which also comes from Joanna Macy. It's arts-informed and aesthetic, and it's ecocentric. I'll show you a slide a little in 2 slides from now about the difference between anthropocentric and ecocentric and what that looks like. So the location of the problem for these, for people who come for therapy services, is in the broken relationship between the human and more than human world. So when we talk about nature, we use the term more than human world so that it feels expansive. Next slide. Theoretical characteristics, biocentrism, that is extending inherent values to all living things. It's informed by indigenous perspectives and deep ecology, and it's a form of therapy that is intermodal. The goal of the work is to create a life worth living that contributes to both human and ecological well-being, to understand and transform symptoms into energy for meaningful action. And our practice is nature-informed conceptualizations, assessments, and interventions with the clients. We question stories that could be perpetuating an unsustainable lifestyle. We decenter in nature and reconnect to nature-based resources for well-being. There's an aesthetic response to nature-based experiences. We link to our elders' stories, rites, and rituals. We develop a nature-based expressive arts daily practice, and we have a visioning of life, of a life worth living that cares for the earth. Next slide. This is the anthropocentric view on the left and the ecocentric paradigm that we're trying to shift people's understanding of how they exist in the world. Instead of sort of having this view of being the top of the hierarchy that's presented on the left, we fit within all of life, and that is fitting into the web of life. And then as an art therapist, we have a neurological foundation for the work that we do, which is called the Expressive Therapies Continuum. And the Expressive Therapies Continuum is the evidence-based framework art therapists use to make therapeutic decisions for how to work with clients. It connects expressive experiences to neurological processes. So on the left side of this chart, it is the left hemisphere processes in the brain. And on the right side, it is the right hemisphere processes. And this is all being becoming evidence-based through neuroimaging, but has been around since the 1970s. So art therapists were keenly aware that art materials and the practices that we have to engage the body sensorially and through kinesthetic experiences are rooted in the brainstem. And so that's why it's at the bottom of the hierarchy. The midbrain, the limbic system, is the affective level, so our emotional level, and our perceptual level, which the left hemisphere helps through languaging our emotions, which is really important to redeveloping a person's response to their amygdala. And then the higher level, the cognitive and symbolic levels, are our prefrontal cortex and cortex responses. And when we are balanced in processing in our brain, we find that we come into a harmony between the left and right hemisphere. We can see this with musicians very, very easily in brain scans, that their whole brain is being activated as they're creating music. And we see that midline as the right and left hemispheres speaking well to each other, and then creativity just is the experience of life, and this is very healing, which is why expressive therapies are healing for the brain. Go to the next slide. So I wanted to show you what this looks like. These are some examples of expressive nature-based art that I have done. On the left, this is a poem. There's a format within one of the nature-based books that I use to reference experientials, where I modified it so that I went on a sensory walk and then had these prompts. The first one is I am, and you include a color. So my sense that I was checking out was my sight, my sense of sight, and connecting that to my body through art making. I drew a quick sketch of what I was seeing, which were some trees across the river. And then I am, include a texture. These were some field stones that were highly textured that I was near that I could touch. And so then I included them in just a quick sketch. And a lot of art therapy is actually quick sketches. It is not, you don't have to be an artist to do art therapy. It's just a form of communication. So including a sound, I heard the crickets, so I drew a cricket, chirp, chirp. I include a smell, and I wrote down the smell because I did not know how to draw a smell. But these were, there were 2 pages for the poem, but I'm just gonna read you the poem to give you an idea of how we put the end product together. So the poem goes, I am the red leaves popping out from within the green. I am the flat and jagged river rocks. I am the chirps of the crickets in the grasses. I am the subtle smell of autumn decay in the cool shadows of the trees. I am the tired one standing in the shade, soaking up this moment of rest. You ask me what it is that you need to know. I am the river of repetition and growth. You are surprised that the grasses have grown again without you taking notice. And so it's relational, is basically what it comes down to. Each one of these experientials was geared towards healing a very specific directive that was given in a classroom typically. And then my work as the provider and learning how to do nature-based expressive arts was to be in relationship with nature in order to meet the directives, needs. And then the end product is this new relationship with myself and with the natural world. And in many of these situations, with my family or with my friends who were doing the art experientials with me. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. So we're going to do an experiential together. This is modified from a training that I did. It was for a nature-based expressive arts training that was for trauma and grief and how to process loss. Elizabeth Warson is a researcher and therapist who created the format that we'll be using, but the modification comes from using images of paths. There's research around a path that Annie, can you go to the next slide too? A path in nature can lead you to a sense of mystery within yourself. And so that is a way to start stoking the creativity and a sense of wanting to move forward within ourselves, which is very important when people are healing from trauma and grief. So we're going to pick one of these pages. Since we're on this page, we'll just use this one. And I'm going to give you a series of prompts, and you're going to then respond in writing on your paper. And then at the end, you're going to be creating a combination of your words in a couple of sentences or into a short poem. And this will be your end product, but the experience is what's important. You're going to be anchoring in your body, and then you're going to be using different parts of your thinking to engage the different areas of the brain. So I'm just going to assume that everybody is prepared, and just take a breath, find yourself in your seat. And on that breath, just know that you're breathing in and know that you're breathing out. And when you're prepared on your next in breath, you can pick an anchor point inside of your body. This could be noticing the breath. It could be noticing your sense of touch, like your feet on the ground, or what it feels like to be sitting in the chair. It could be noticing the temperature of your skin, maybe where your skin is not got any clothes over it, your arms might be exposed to the cool air. Or you might notice that you have a headache or a buzzing sensation in your body. You might also notice a sense of calm or some emotions or some thoughts. And whatever it is that can be an anchor point for you that you could return to at the end of this experiential, I want you to write that down on your piece of paper. And then you can pick one of the images on the screen, and whichever one you're more drawn to, and write down 4 to 5 adjectives. Those are descriptive words about the image that you see. Okay, and then we're going to write down 1 or 2 associations that you have. For instance, maybe looking at the purple flowers, you remember a time that you were somewhere where you saw purple flowers like this. Or if you're looking at the road on the right, you remember a vacation that you went on. And you can write down 1 or 2 of those associations. The next step is going to be potentially the hardest one, is to write down a cyclical reference. For instance, the birth and death cycle, the seasons changing, any kind of growth that is cyclical or experience that's cyclical, that the image kind of evokes for you. Once you have all of that written down, I just invite you to connect with your breath again and find the anchor point that you started with. And then notice if you have any new associations with that anchor point, and write that down. And when you're ready, you can combine your words and phrases into 1 or 2 new sentences or a short poem. And just trust yourself. Let this be an intuitive process, what you're drawn to for connecting the words and reordering them in a way that feels right to you and also potentially feels good to you inside of your body or mind. It'll take just about another minute of writing time. Okay. And in the interest of having time to talk about all of this, we're going to wrap up this experiential. And I'm hoping that maybe a few people would be open to sharing what they ended up with in the end. So the end product, what you just wrote down, and to let us know which image you were reflecting with and interacting with. Are there any volunteers to be brave and share? Sarah, yes.
Sarah, yeah. Thank you for being here today, both of you. Sorry I'm late. So yeah, here's mine. I picked the image with the blue flowers. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, here it goes. Feet on chair, far from the mystical, peaceful beauty of the Bluebell Meadow at Carly State Park, when springtime brings rebirth, yearning for the forest path.
And then just notice what happens inside of your body when you hear that. I see some hearts. This is the power of nature to resensitize us. If you feel pins and needles or movement or softening or just like an emotional response to this, this is why nature-based therapy works. We all need this, but it's been largely developed through trauma-informed care. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can go next. This is
Thank
Brian
you.
Lynch. I'll do the image on the right. So when I thought of this, I thought of sort of relaxation. I thought of the morning, being refreshed. And this reminded me of a road I drove on a family vacation in South Carolina, which was a very good vacation with a lot of very good memories. So I thought about this representing like the day, like a cycle of the morning, afternoon, evening, night. And just said, a new day brings new hope.
Hmm. And Brian, did you recombine everything at the end?
Well, my last line I felt like was kind of a combination of,
Oh,
identifying as representing the day, and then sort of the hope and relaxation. So that was kind of my tie-in line.
that's wonderful. Can you read that one more time for us?
A new day brings new hope.
Hmm. Thank you so much. And just feel where you can feel that in your body, hearing Brian's reflection. Annie, can you go to the slide before? Because I did this last night, and I'll share the one that I did for the other slide. On the left, I used that image and ended up having a short poem. So here it goes. Breath, long and wooden, starting at the beginning and feeling green. Spiritual practice to find mystical lightness. Getting to the end and then starting again. Now, something that we could also do, and we can go back to the next slide, is to incorporate haiku into this. So it is, haiku is a form of poetry that we do counting on our fingers to find the syllables. And haiku has been shown to be a really effective form of poetry to help people have relationship with nature. It's when we have these kinesthetic sensory experiences that we're connecting our brainstem with the higher regions of our brain. And through the creative process, we're integrating through each level and giving people experiences that help them move into brain regions that they maybe are not used to touching, not used to exercising. Our school system is geared towards using the left side of our brain coming from a top-down approach, which means we're really in the cognitive thinking parts, but not really very regularly getting down into the body-based parts of our experience of life, which kind of starts detaching people from their bodies. And that detachment is theorized and I think probably known by other cultures, indigenous, and through the deep ecology movement. That division is then like echoed back to us in the lifestyles that we lead and the relationship that we have with nature. And so we're trying to heal that relationship by letting people who are part of nature have an experience of being integrated with themselves, which lets them be safer when they go into the wild. And with that, I will end the presentation. Thank you for everyone who shared. And then we're opening this up to questions and comments. Sarah?
I'm just curious, maybe in your introductions you talk more about it, but like where people could take courses or get certification or training on this sort of nature-based, whether it's with art or some sort of therapeutic activities you can incorporate into the work you do. I know like the U of M has the Bakken Center for Spirituality, and I've seen some online things, but yeah, what are some places that are, maybe Minnesota based or just accessible that you would recommend?
Well, if you want to become an art therapist, it's not very accessible. You have to go to grad school. It's sort of, that's a difficult part, but a lot of people integrate art into their work with clients. I think the difference between working with an art therapist and somebody who integrates art is that art therapists are thinking about the neurology behind the processes, and that's not trained unless you go to graduate school. So probably that one is a tricky one, but maybe Annie, you have some other recommendations.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with what you said, that currently kind of the professionalization of therapy does create barriers as far as providing actual psychotherapy methods. I think the Bakken Center is a great resource. There's also great resources. There's some great books. Child and Nature Network or Children and Nature Network has a lot of great research that I think is really applicable and a lot of great infographics. I'm working with my supervisor, Carrie. We are hoping to do some like continuing education trainings. I'm hoping to start doing more consultations and trainings as well that can be a little more accessible, especially to like parks and to kind of some of these consortiums and consulting. That won't be me certifying people to do therapy, but as far as like using some of these mindfulness-based practices in the work, yeah. So I don't know if that helps.
I would say that also if we're looking at Buddhist centers, a lot of Buddhist centers are bringing people together with nature and also having workshop opportunities to do the work that reconnects by Joanna Macy. So the Zen Center is one that there are people trained there and they offer workshops occasionally.
Yeah, and I think there's one in Savage, but that's kind of far from, yeah. There's also some online, like there's a care farm that's starting up. Jeannie Larson at the U of M is starting, I can't remember the name of the care farm, but there's going to be some great like experiences to engage in. And I think the more that we allow ourselves to connect with some of these activities, the more we are going to feel equipped to do and to facilitate them. So looking at some of the places locally that have a lot of these experiences and will allow us to engage in them.
Any other questions or comments?
This is Ariel. Yeah, thank you, Annie and Becca. This was such a great presentation. And I think probably what Sarah's alluding to too is like without the completely changing your career, right? Like so many of our people who work in parks and are interested in this, but not necessarily like to be, you know, a park naturalist slash therapist, although I don't know what your long-term plan is. But to, you know, Annie, we had briefly talked about the idea of you and Kari, or is it Carrie?
Carrie, yep.
Carrie, maybe thinking about developing some sort of training or something that could be used for outdoor educators or naturalists that would kind of develop some tools or techniques that would be appropriate for that role, knowing that, you know,
yes. That is definitely a goal of mine. I'm really hoping to develop some curriculum. I'm going to a nature-based therapy training in British Columbia, and I'm kind of excited to before I start some of that work, I'm excited to get some more tools so I can really tailor it to outdoor educators and kind of hoping to sort of create some kind of consortium statewide of park people who are interested in doing and incorporating some of this in their work, because I think there's ways to do it in a way that's not necessarily shifting, but kind of looking at and exploring what are we currently doing and how can we incorporate some of these mindfulness practices within what we have, and how can we use our own individual strengths and talents to facilitate some of these really healing programs that connect people with nature as a healing resource.
This is Sarah again. I'm just thinking too about just public schools and teachers and teaching kids when they're in preschool some of these techniques, because my 8-year-old, he goes to counseling at school because he was having big feelings. And I know after the pandemic and, you know, all the isolation and stuff, it's a common thing, but he shadowed me on a forest bathing walk the other day, and he was an angel. It was for, you know, camp counselors at a Bible camp, but he was, you know, he didn't have daycare, so he's coming with mom, and he did perfect. And at the end I said, see, this is the type of thing you can do when you feel big feelings coming on. And he said, but they don't let us go outside of school, mom. And I thought, well, how do we have these conversations with school administrators and teachers and the counselors at the schools, you know?
Yep. So important. And again, I think this comes to my desire to really push for preventative mental health. I've been meeting with some of our state legislators about how we can kind of reconstruct the system, because I think there's a stigma that is also reinforced and re-emphasized when we rely on diagnosis. And so in order to kind of dismantle some of that, in order to create communities of healing and resourced communities, I think that's something that I'm personally really passionate about.
This is Ariel again. Sorry, I'm going to say one more thing because I think it's relevant. I think there will be some re-energizing of if anyone on this call is familiar with last year, there was kind of this pledge about the Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights that was developed out of the governor's children's cabinet. And basically all it was kind of a list of things that every child in Minnesota, deserves related to outdoor access and experiencing nature. And I think it hasn't moved forward in a real programmatic way yet, but I heard recently that there will be, with the result of this this legislative session being a big boon for the DNR, and I think there will be some more focus on kind of investing in the Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights in terms of implementation. So I think I'll be involved in that to some extent. So I'll try to keep all of you in the loop because I think there's a big potential for collaboration and thinking, brainstorming ideas for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariel.
Thank you so much, Ariel, for that amazing announcement. I think we came to the end, so thank you so much, Annie and Becca, for the very, very informative presentation. I learned a lot, and I hope the public will be learning a lot from. So thank you so much, and we hope you come back and bring a lot of information. So thank you so much, and thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Abdi.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.